I didn't check my credit card that often. I had alerts set up, and most of my purchases were routine groceries bills, the occasional overpriced coffee when work ran late. But that Monday morning, as I stood in my kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil, I opened the app out of habit. There it was. 4 transactions, all posted over the weekend. 4 Seasons Maui, $6,380 Hawaiian Airlines, $3,920 Island Helicopter Tours, $2, $100 Luxury Luau Experience, $2, $840, total $15,240, 72. For a second, I thought I had been hacked. The numbers didn't feel real, like Monopoly money. My hands hovered above the counter, the kettle still whistling behind me. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. She didn't start with a hello, just her usual cheerful urgency. Rach, isn't it exciting? Chloe's graduation trip is finally happening. Can you believe it? Hawaii? She's been dreaming of it for years. I didn't speak. Oh, and thank you for letting us use your card. We'll pay you back soon. We just needed the miles for the upgrades. You've got such a good credit score. That was the moment. Not the charges, not even the dollar amount. It was the way she said it. Light, like asking to borrow an umbrella. She didn't ask. She never had to. I was the daughter who didn't say no. I cleared my throat. You used my card without asking. A pause. Just enough to know she wasn't expecting the question. Rachel, don't be dramatic. We raised you. You've been blessed, and Chloe, well, she deserves something special after working so hard. That's the thing. My mother always wrapped entitlement in silk. She never screamed. She never called names. Just used that warm, reasonable tone that made you feel ashamed for questioning her. And I'd spent most of my life mistaking that for love. The kettle clicked off. I stared at the 4 digits glowing on my phone screen, wondering how many times I'd let things slide before this. How many small betrayals I'd folded into politeness. How many times I'd smiled through being erased. And somewhere between the island helicopter tour and the luau, I realized something. This wasn't about money. It was about what I'd been taught to accept. And maybe for once, I wasn't going to. It wasn't the first time something had been taken without asking. It started small. Or maybe I just told myself it was small. When I was 13, I got accepted into a summer program for gifted students, math of all things. I was quiet bookish, and my teachers thought I could use the challenge. I remember printing out the acceptance letter and placing it on the kitchen counter like it was a trophy. No one said anything. That same week, Chloe made the dance team at her middle school. There were cupcakes, balloons. My mother cried tears of joy. I clapped. I smiled. I stayed out of the pictures. I learned early that Chloe's wins were family wins. Mine were quiet things, private things, best kept to myself. I told myself it wasn't favoritism, that Chloe was just younger, softer, more in need of celebration. I had always been the easy one, self-motivated, low maintenance. That was the phrase my dad used once, low maintenance, like a dependable car that never broke down. And dependable things, people don't throw parties for them. By 17, I was working 2 part-time jobs to save for college. My parents said they'd help if they could, but Chloe's ballet academy was expensive and, well, she had potential. They said it with a kind of reverence, like she was on the verge of something spectacular, if only we all chipped in. I let them reallocate my college fund. I said it was fine. I meant it when I said it. And maybe that was the real betrayal, how easily I'd let it happen. Chloe was always sweet to me. That's the part no one understands. She wasn't cruel. She didn't gloat. She just expected things. She had grown up in a world where things showed up for her like magic. Clothes in her size, a new iPhone when hers cracked, someone else's credit card booking the spring break hotel. She was the kind of girl life handed umbrellas to before the storm even started. And I carried my own rain. By the time I graduated college debt-free, thanks to scholarships and a side job at the library, I didn't even tell my parents about the ceremony. I knew they wouldn't come. Chloe had a regional dance competition that weekend. Years later, sitting in my apartment, a glass of lukewarm wine in hand, and $15,000 missing from my credit limit, I realized I had never actually confronted any of it. Not the erased college fund, not the birthdays where Chloe's name was on the cake, not the phone calls that always began with "Can you help?" and never ended with "Thank you." I had been quiet for so long I'd mistaken the silence for peace. But now that silence had a balance due, and this time I wasn't paying. I called her that night, not because I wanted to fight, because I needed to understand. The line rang 4 times before she picked up her voice, already smiling. "Sweetheart, I was just telling your father we should send Chloe a spa voucher for after the trip. Her skin gets so sensitive in the sun." I skipped the small talk. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the credit card." A pause. I could almost hear her rearranging her voice into something softer, more maternal. "Rachel, honey, this again. You used it without asking me. Technically, we've had access to that card since your father's surgery. You said we could use it for emergencies. This wasn't an emergency. It was important." Her tone tightened. She wasn't angry, not yet. Just sharpening the knife. "Your sister graduated with honors. She's worked hard. This was her moment. And you thought it was okay to charge $15,000 to my name." She exhaled as if I were a stubborn child refusing medicine. "You always do this." "Do what? Turn everything into a transaction. Money, money, money. That's all you ever think about." That landed like a slap. Me, the one who gave up her college fund. One who paid for her own education, her own car, her own everything. The one who never asked for anything back. "You didn't even tell me I said quieter now. You didn't think I deserved to know, because I knew you'd make it a problem. Rachel, you've always had this edge, always so cold, so withholding." I didn't want to ruin the moment. There it was. I ruined things. That was the role I played. I sat down the phone warm against my cheek. "You said you'd pay me back." "Of course we will," she said quickly. "But not right this second. You know your father's pension doesn't stretch like it used to. And you, well, you're doing so well. You've got your little job in that apartment of yours. No husband, no kids, no real expenses. No real expenses. As if my life didn't count unless I had someone else depending on me." I felt something crack in my throat. I swallowed it. "You think that means you can take from me? I think it means you should be happy for your sister." There it was again. The reframing, the rewrite, the guilt gift-wrapped. "She's always been so generous with you. You know," she continued, "when you missed her birthday last year, she told everyone it was because you were working so hard. She defended you. I didn't even know I was invited." "Well, that's your problem, Rachel. You always expect people to chase you. You isolate. You pull away. And when we try to include you, yes, maybe in ways that aren't perfect, you lash out." It was so smooth, so practiced. I almost believed her. Almost. But I was tired of swallowing blame just because it was served in a sweet voice. "I'm going to the bank tomorrow," I said flatly. "Rachel, I didn't authorize those charges, and I'm not carrying them. Sweetheart. Good night, Mom." I hung up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after someone slams a door and you finally hear how heavy it really was. The next morning, I called the bank. I had rehearsed the script in my head, calm, factual, reasonable. A professional woman disputing unauthorized charges. I imagined the voice on the other end saying things like, "We'll get right on that," or "We understand completely." Instead, I got put on hold, then transferred. Then told gently but firmly that because my parents had been listed as emergency users on the account years ago, technically it wasn't considered fraud. "You granted them access," the woman said. "Even if it was for a limited purpose, we can't prove misuse without written restrictions." She sounded sorry, but that kind of sorry didn't fix anything. I thanked her anyway. That's what I do. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. There's a certain kind of quiet that settles when you realize no one is coming to fix this. Not the bank, not the law, not your family. Just you. Alone. I opened my laptop, typed unauthorized family credit card use. The first few results were legal blogs. The rest were Reddit threads, stories from people like me, people who said yes once and watched it turn into a lifetime of obligation. People who lent and then were told it was a gift. People who were always expected to say yes and punished the moment they didn't. The same day, Chloe posted a photo on Instagram. Her in a floral sundress on a beach holding a coconut drink and beaming under the caption, "Dreams do come true." She didn't tag me. Of course not, but I knew the smile. That easy, effortless smile that came from never having to think about where the money came from. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was angry, because I couldn't remember the last time I looked that happy. A few hours later, I got a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, everything okay with you and your mom? Heard there was drama." I didn't reply. Then came a message from my Aunt Linda, said you're upset about the trip, that you felt excluded. It's sad. You've always been so distant. There it was again. That word. Distant. Not hurt, not disrespected, just distant. Cold. Hard to love. Funny how people always interpret boundaries as walls you built out of malice, never out of self-preservation. I scrolled back to Chloe's post. Hundreds of likes. Comments from family friends, people from church. "You deserve it, girl. Your parents are amazing. So proud of you." I imagined what they'd say if I told them the truth. That she didn't pay for a single thing. That I was the one who funded the coconut drink, the beachfront suite, the rainbow lei around her neck. But I already knew the answer. They'd say I was bitter, jealous, ungrateful. Because in families like mine, silence is the currency of peace. And speaking up, that makes you the problem. So I closed the app and opened a blank document. I didn't plan to post anything. I wasn't the type. I'd always hated oversharing. Watching other people put their pain out for the world to dissect like it was entertainment made me uncomfortable. I told myself I was better than that, more private, more composed. But it wasn't about me anymore. It was about how quickly the truth disappeared the moment someone told a prettier story. By Friday, I had received 6 texts from extended family. A voicemail from a former babysitter I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Even my old piano teacher reached out on Facebook commenting under a picture I hadn't updated in years. "Hope you're not taking things too personally. Your mom always means well." That was the final nudge, not the theft. Not the silence. Not even Chloe's new reel dancing barefoot on the beach with ukulele music in the background. It was the condescension, the way everyone assumed I was the one overreacting, as if generosity had been offered and I'd thrown it back. So I wrote. Not for revenge, not even to be understood. I wrote because I was tired of pretending it hadn't happened. It took me 3 hours. Not because the story was hard to tell, but because I had to decide which parts to include and which parts to let go. I kept it short. No accusations, just the facts. A few weeks ago, my parents used my credit card to fund a $15,000 graduation trip to Hawaii for my younger sister. They did not ask me. They did not inform me. When I confronted them, I was told I was being selfish and dramatic. I was also told that because I am single child-free and financially stable, my resources should be considered communal. I included the screenshots, the charges, a portion of the voicemail from my mom. I ended it with a line I hadn't planned but didn't delete. Silence keeps families functioning. It also keeps injustice invisible. I hit post. Then I turned off my phone and took a walk. It was a gray afternoon, the kind of sky that looked like it had forgotten how to rain. I walked past couples pushing strollers, dogs pulling their owners toward invisible smells, teenagers clicking past on skateboards. No one looked at me. No one knew that somewhere online, a quiet woman had just stopped being quiet. When I got home, the notifications had started. Some supportive, some accusatory. Some from strangers who saw their own stories in mine and wrote messages that began with, "I thought I was the only one." But the one that made me pause came from my Aunt Naomi, my mother's younger sister, the kind of woman who wore oversized jewelry and said whatever she wanted, but never without purpose. Her message was short. "You're brave, and not wrong. She did this to me once too. Call me when you can. We hadn't spoken in years. Last I'd heard, they'd had a falling out over money. I had never asked the details, just assumed it was a misunderstanding. Now I knew better. We spoke that night. She didn't bother with small talk, just dove in. She borrowed 10 grand from me back in 2009. Said it was for your dad's back surgery. I found out later she used it to redecorate Chloe's room. When I asked for it back, she said I was obsessed with money and told the family I was unstable. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened. And when we hung up, I called the bank again this time, not as a confused daughter, but as someone armed with context documentation and legal advice. They reopened the case. The investigation took 10 days. By the end of it, the charges were reversed. I received a formal apology from the bank, a letter explaining their revised stance, and a warning that any future shared access on that account would be permanently disabled. The money was back. The trust was not. At dinner that weekend, I ate alone. A quiet meal in my small apartment with the window cracked open and the smell of someone else's takeout drifting in. I poured a glass of wine, not to celebrate, but to acknowledge something simple. It was over. Not the pain, not the history, but the part of me that had always waited for them to make it right. That part had been returned to sender. They didn't call right away. Not after the post. Not after the charges were reversed. Not when Chloe's trip was cut short because the card had been flagged and the hotel demanded a different payment method. But 2 weeks later, my phone rang on a Sunday morning. Unknown number. California area code. I didn't answer. A voicemail followed. It was my mother. Her voice was measured. Flat, almost. We're concerned. This isn't how family handles things. You've embarrassed us. You've humiliated your sister. You've turned private matters into public drama. I hope you're proud of yourself. There was no apology. Only shame. Not theirs, mine. Chloe texted later that day. I didn't know they used your card. I swear. I thought it was part of the gift. I wouldn't have gone if I knew. Then a second message. But you didn't have to post it like that. You made everything so ugly. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. The kind that comes after months of clouded vision. After years of trying to earn a kind of love that only existed when I was useful. I didn't respond. Not to Chloe. Not to my mother. Not to anyone who only called when the image cracked. A few days later, I walked past a store window and caught my reflection. Just for a second. Just long enough to recognize the woman standing there. She looked calm. Not triumphant. Not broken. Just real. For years, I had accepted a version of myself told through other people's voices. Too cold. Too distant. Too ungrateful. Too much. But the silence I had kept wasn't peace. It was permission, and I wasn't giving it anymore. So I did the quiet thing, the irreversible thing. I changed my number. I closed the shared bank accounts. I removed them from my emergency contacts. I booked a weekend trip alone to a cabin in the mountains with no cell signal and too many stars overhead. And when I came back, I didn't check for messages. There were some, I'm sure. Voicemails I'll never listen to. Stories I'll never get to correct. That's the price of letting go. But I've made peace with it. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying. It's stepping away so the version of you they invented can finally die. And the version that survived, she gets to live. Not loudly, not to prove a point, but fully, quietly, and without permission. I didn't disappear. They just stopped seeing me. And now that I've stopped waiting, I finally see myself.